and boom goes the dynamite.
Welcome back to another edition of Daily Dive, the only Monday through Friday live lacrosse talk show. I'm your host, Michael Karvelis. To everyone on the East Coast, good morning. And to everyone on the West Coast, good afternoon. It's time for lunch and some lacrosse talk. Today is going to be our 2023 NLL playoff preview. We will have special guests on the show, Cody Janzen and Maggie Hale, two people you will recognize from this show before. I also want to get in, first of all here, to a key transaction that happened. The San Diego Seals have placed Brody Merrill on the active roster after he missed some time this year due to injury. So Brody Merrill, who played in 17 games this year and got 14 points, but the key here, 116 loose balls and 18 caused turnovers, is going to be back for San Diego as they will host the Colorado Mammoth. And we'll see how the gang feels about that. But I just thought that for this show, we'd have a playoff preview. So we're going to talk all 4 games, whether you have to watch them on ESPN or TSN Plus, or whether you can watch them on just your regular TV broadcast. I know I talked about that yesterday. And also, if you have not done so yet, fill in a bracket, a Daily Dive bracket challenge for this season. A chance at a $50 Fanatics gift card and your choice of Daily Dive swag. So, let's get into our 2023 NLL playoff preview after this break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Cody Janzen and Maggie Hale. Thanks so much. Don't go anywhere. I'm very happy on this 2023 NLL playoff preview to be joined by 2 guests here, Cody Janzen and Maggie Hale. Maggie Hale, the Panther City reporter, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us for this special. And Cody Janzen, Saskatchewan Rush play-by-play. How are you, sir?
Always happy to talk lacrosse.
That's right. Box lacrosse at that. So let's get right into it. There are 4 games on the docket this week. We'll go Eastern Conference and then Western Conference. Eastern Conference, we've got Rochester at Buffalo. And I'm going to start off with Cody Janzen on this one. Cody, does Rochester stand a chance? I know it's crazy to be thinking about what happened earlier in the season and how good they were. They stand a chance in this game, though, if we're being realistic.
I think everyone's got a chance in a single elimination game, but realistically, is anyone predicting them to pull off the upset? I don't think so. They've been a slumping team that got out to a really hot start. Obviously, you would need just a worldly performance between the pipes and probably need Connor Fields to go off for 5. So is it likely? No. Do they have a chance? Yeah, but it's a pretty slim one in my opinion.
It is single elimination. And Maggie, bouncing off what Cody said, how do you believe the Nighthawks could pull off an upset in this game?
I think it's going to come down to Connor Fields and what kind of night he has. But then for me also, it definitely always comes down to the goalies. I think we see that a lot with the other teams. If Hartley can produce, then I think a lot of the other guys on that team are just going to get going as well.
Mr. Split Saves, you got to love him. And back to you, Cody. who has the goaltending advantage? Is it Rylan Hartley on a good night, or is it Matt Vince just in general?
You just hit the nail on the head. Is it a good night for Rylan Hartley, or is it a bad night? He's kind of been one of those goaltenders who's really fluctuated this year. I think he's close to a 770 save percentage, which puts him kind of in that lower to bottom end of the league. I know there was a lot of MVP talks after the first half of the season, but again, his play is really tapered off with the team. You got to give the credit to Matt Vince, though. You know, a goaltender of his age to be back around 800 in the save percentage category, to be continually doing what he's doing, how well he's playing coming into playoffs, especially against Toronto. I think you'd be crazy not to tip your hat towards Vino and Buffalo right here.
Maggie, I'll let you have a say on that one too. Who do you got in that matchup?
You know, I'm not really sure. I think it really just depends on what kind of night these guys are having. I think that's what it comes down to with a lot of these games, especially being single elimination. Just what kind of night they're having and kind of just how the rest of the team is going to rally around them. I think the goalies really do start a lot of that offense and the defense, even though they're not on the offense. A lot of times you see a lot of those goalies just in the transition making it happen. So I think a lot of the times it's going to have to come down to if their actual offense is good and then their transition is getting going. And then if the goalies are having a good night, it really just depends on if everyone's having a good night. It could happen to anyone.
Good point. Locked in. It's hard to do sometimes. To me, if Buffalo loses, it will be one of the biggest upsets, if not the biggest upset in NLL history. I haven't read up on my history too much, but I just say I'm pretty confident in that one. Let's move on to our next game. It's a battle of Canadians. This should be fun. It's Toronto. It's Halifax at Toronto. And Maggie, I'll let you start with this one. What is more important to you in this game for this to be working? Halifax's offense or Toronto's defense?
I think that the Rock's defense is just too powerful for their offense to even get going. I mean, the last time they played, they outshot the Rock for the first time this season, and it still wasn't enough. It was pretty one-sided still. 12-7, I think, was the score. So I've got to always take the Rock's defense on this one.
I love it. Cody, is Halifax playing with house money, or is there pressure for them to advance, especially since they got so hot at the end of the year?
It's an interesting one. I think they are kind of playing with house money. You're right in that sense of they don't have the pressure. All the pressure in the world's on Toronto. Toronto's the team that went out and had the big off season. They brought in the big names. They're now fully or close to fully healthy. So I do think all the pressure falls on Toronto in this game. But you also can't ignore the fact that Halifax is one of the league's top spenders as well. You know, we're not talking about the Oakland Athletics. This isn't Moneyball right now. You're talking about two of the premier franchises in the NLL, teams that are spending to the cap and more. So while I do think all the pressure is on Toronto, I think that Halifax has a certain expectation, and back-to-back first-round losses would be not catastrophic, but it's not ideal. It's again, what's worse, miss the playoffs or lose out in the first round? You know, it's very much similar, especially in a league where you count championships, not playoff victories.
Ask the Boston Bruins about the first round. Maggie, is American, no offense to Cody, is American NLL superstar Tom Schreiber the X factor in this game? I know you mentioned defense, but how big does he have to be in this game?
He's got to be big, and I think he is big. I think we've seen that from him all season, but since it's the playoffs, you know, it's starting over. It's like it's week one all over again. He's got to prove himself in this one game tonight, but I know that he's on a lot of our guys is at Panther City with the broadcast team, a lot of their MVP for the league list. So I think that he's really got to have a good game, especially if he wants to live up to that stature that our guys have deemed him.
I love the inside of it. Thank you, Maggie, for that. Now we got a little preview here. And like I said, two Canadian teams battling it out. I mean, that's huge for Canadian TV exposure. Maybe next year we'll actually get them all on TSN and not just TSN Plus for a few of these jokers. Let's take a quick break, guys. And when we come back, we're going to reset. We're going to do that Western Conference. This should be a fun one because there's two very intriguing matchups. It's 2023 NLL Playoff Preview. I'm joined by Maggie Hale and Cody Janzen. We'll be right back. Once again, our 2023 NLL playoff preview here on Daily Dive, presented by the Daily Dive store. Check it out. We've got new shirts out, and I promise you will love them. I gotta get these two guys some shirts as well, Maggie Hale and Cody Janzen as well. Take a deep breath, guys. We got one more conference to go here. Single elimination games again. It's Colorado. It's San Diego in the beautiful San Diego, California. Let's go to Cody on this one. Cody, why does Colorado scare San Diego? They've had some tough matchups in these games this year.
I think Colorado just plays a style that San Diego struggles to match. It's that physical intensity. It's a full 60-minute effort. They're not a team that just plays in little spurts here and there. They're a team that really does compete, and that's kind of just the Pat Coyle way, which is why they gave Buffalo fits last year in the playoffs and final two. But I think there's also an aspect of Colorado really struggles on the road. Like, they're the second worst team on the road in the NLL this season at 2-7. I don't think you can overlook that of how much they've struggled, but when you've got Dylan Ward and you've got some talent up front and some of the leaders that they have, I don't think you can ever count them out.
I love that, especially with the Dylan Ward factor. We talk about Matt Vince. Well, Dylan Ward's awesome too. Question for Maggie now. Is all the pressure on the San Diego Seals to keep this big train rolling, or should the defending champions feel just as much heat if they were to lose this game?
You know, I think just that question alone says it, that they are the defending champions, and you don't want to your next season bounce back and go out, I mean, especially in the first round of the playoffs. I think they are a really good team, and I think they know how to beat San Diego. They've done it before. It was a tight game, but they've done it before. But I do think that there are a ton of guys that you could all but guarantee on San Diego that if they don't win the championship this year, they're not going to retire until they do. So I think that team has a lot to play for this season as well. So I don't know. I think it's pretty equal. I would say that both of those teams are really feeling the heat right now. And I think it's probably going to be one of the more physical games.
That's a good point. I hate to do this to you both here. Do you think it's one of the best games of the weekend? Maggie? I know.
I mean, what do you expect her to say? I think there's some sort of bias here.
Next here.
I think it'll be a great game. Not the best, but a great game.
What about you, Cody?
I mean, it's going to be a good one. I think they all have interesting storylines. I think, myself, be it, in Western Canada, probably Calgary, Panther City's a little more attractive. Plus, with all the, Alberta connections on Panther City, I think that one's got my eye a little bit more. I think this is going to be it's going to be an awesome game. It's going to be a bloodbath out there. Like, these teams hate each other, and they've played each other 3 times in the past month. But I also could see this one getting ugly if San Diego shows up clutch. And I mean, kind of to jump back on that last question, I think all the pressure ends up being on San Diego. I think if you're Colorado, you won a championship that you weren't supposed to win last year. Now you're back in the playoffs after a close playoff race in a season where you hardly had Ryan Lee. San Diego went out and spent, and they backed up the Brinks truck to bring in their offense, right? They didn't just go and draft and develop these guys. They went out and handpicked each piece. They got an all-star lineup. If they were to lose out in the first round, that's catastrophic failure, especially getting a home floor advantage.
I mean, I think San Diego has been pretty much a consistent team player-wise, just roster-wise, since their inaugural season. So I think they've had enough time just to play with each other, and they know each other at this point, and especially any game that Austin Stotts is playing in, it's going to get dirty.
Oh, and Dane Dobie too. In my opinion, the Mammoth do get the upside here. I picked on my daily bracket challenge. I'm not going to force you guys to make the pick here, but I do believe Colorado gets the win here. It's going to be tough, but I'm rooting for blood as well, so I like that aspect of it as well. That sounds great, don't it? Panther City at Calgary, a.k.a. Fort Worth, Texas at Calgary. Maggie, the Panther City reporter, what went wrong in the regular season for Panther City when playing this Roughnecks team?
I think to really understand what went wrong in a lot of those games, you have to look at what went right the last time they played in that first half. I mean, they went into halftime up 8-5, and there weren't a lot of people there, but the people that were there were going crazy for that game. I mean, Panther City was really putting it on them. So I think when you look at what went right there, I mean, Nick Damoud was on, all of the guys, the shots were just shotting. The whole team was just having a great game at that point. So I think what really went wrong is, for me, it starts a lot with Nick Damoud. When he's having a great game, then the rest of the team follows. But when he's not, then the rest of the team kind of follows through with that one as well. So I think a lot of it really is just going to depend on how Nick plays and kind of how versatile those guys can get. You know, they switch around a lot with their roles. If one of those guys isn't having a good night, they've got an entire stack of offense that can really just shoot those shots. So I think it really will just depend on kind of like what we've been saying. It's a single elimination game. It's starting over. It's like week one all over again. The rest of it doesn't matter. So I think it's just really going to depend on whose night it is.
I love it. I love the goalie talk too. Cody, does Panther City have enough offense to get to the NLL media's darling, Christian Del Bianco?
I mean, I don't know if you'd call him the media's darling. He's been the best player in the league this year. So I don't think you can undermine what Nicky Damoud's done for Panther City either. I mean, he's had a low-key, unbelievable season. I mean, just a 790 save percentage. He's got the third best goals against average. Like, Panther City doesn't have a slouch between the pipes. I think offensively, that's where they are going to struggle. But it comes down to having a lot of those rookies. And that's the thing. This is going to be a big learning experience for them. They got one of the youngest offenses in the league. I love the, guys like Donville, Dodds, Will Malcolm. You've got Matthew Gauthier. Like, they've got some absolute stars. But are they battle tested for playoffs yet? That's a different breed in the NLL. The game changes. It's much like the NHL playoffs. Defenders get away with a lot more. It becomes a lot more physical. You've got to take a little bit more abuse to get to the front of the net. Little things like that, a lot of young players do struggle with. And so I'd say no if I'm a guessing person, but I also don't think it's impossible to say Panther City goes punch for punch with Calgary here.
I think if anyone's going to take some heat, especially up by the net, it's going to be Gauthier. He's an incredible player. He's got some fight in him. I have seen him walk up to those vets. He knows what he's doing. He knows he belongs there, and he's going to play really hard.
Oh, see, Cody, she's got the on-field stuff. You're always up in the booth, man. You're going to see how she does, man. Come on.
Hey, I get to see Goat on a weekly basis up here with the minors too, and so. He was phenomenal at the Minto Cup last year. Again, he's one of those players who rises to the occasion. So, absolutely. I mean, one of the best young players in the league. Probably doesn't get talked about enough because he doesn't put up the flashy numbers, but he does the little things that offensive coaches and coaches just love.
Fair point. Maggie, one more question for you on this game. How can Panther City pull off the upsets, and how tough will it be at that ugly loud house, they call it?
I've talked to a lot of the guys about this, and I think kind of a different perspective to look at it is they don't get a lot of their family to come see the games in Texas because it is so far. So they're all going to have a bunch of family and friends there, and then just being in Canada, playing back at home for some of them, but even just being back in Canada versus the United States for a lot of them is kind of like just a little bit of a home game for them. So while it is going to be loud, I think that's a loud environment is kind of what a lot of teams feed off of, whether it's your loud or not. it's definitely going to be a hard game, and I know that Calgary is banking on they're going to have to come here. They're going to have to play in our arena. I know it's going to be a tough game, but I do think a lot of those guys are going to rise up to the challenge. Plus, I think it really is hard to beat a team 3 times, and I don't think Panther City wants to get beat 3 times.
I don't think they do either. I love the perspective there with the hometown kids, if you will. That's a good point. I've gone back and forth on this one myself. I believe Calgary wins another close one. I don't know if we get a blowout either way, and I'd love to see Panther City win it, but I give them one more year. You talk to me next year, they might get it done. We've got one more segment to get to here. I want to ask you guys 3 more questions, so hang tight. We'll be right back to the NLL playoff preview. Thanks so much for coming on. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back. NLL playoff preview. Could not have done it without Cody Janzen and Maggie Hale. They have been the stars of this show. So we got 3 more questions here. Cody, we'll start with you on this one. Does home floor matter at all in these playoffs?
Which side are we talking about? East, west, all of it?
Yes or no?
Okay. Well, then I think it matters in the East. I
Okay.
don't think it matters as much in the West. And I think maybe San Diego can weigh that down. I just don't think San Diego has a ton of home floor advantage other than the way that their turf is. And ask any player about it. It's not the prettiest and not, actually looking at it pretty like Calgary's ugly teal turf, but whole nother story there. I just don't think that home field advantage matters too much. I look at the past 2 NLL champions, Colorado and Calgary. Neither of them finished with home floor advantage in that first round. So I would say it doesn't matter as much in the league. Out East, probably a little bit. Like you think about Rochester going to Buffalo, the difference in play. That's a 13,000 plus fan swing going from a Rochester to a Buffalo. Toronto to Halifax, not as much. Again, a lot of Halifax guys are around Toronto, so I don't think that matters a ton. But the Rock crowd's pretty good, and so this is their last time playing in Hamilton for the next, 4 years? So I would assume they get a pretty good turnout here before they have to do all the renovations in Hamilton. They get the boot.
Maggie?
Yeah, I think kind of the same thing. I think it really doesn't matter, especially unless you're just looking at kind of what those teams have done traditionally in their away games, like you said earlier with Colorado. But I think just kind of that whole factor with Panther City that a lot of those guys are seeing their friends and family there when they are having those away games. So while it's away for the actual team, it's really not. They're kind of just home as well. So I know a lot of those guys, like I know Tyler Burton for Panther City, his son is going to get to be there again. So that's going to be really exciting for him. And, that's always fun to just play in front of your family. It's a big deal for those guys.
I love it. Maggie, stars you on this one. Choose one player in these entire NLL playoffs that you think will have a breakout playoffs and why.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to go with Panther City. Like, come on now. But I do think that if I had to pick one player on that team, I'm going to have to go Will Malcolm. I think that he got off to a super hot start at the beginning of the season. And then I think that a lot of guys kind of figured out his playing style and they were kind of able to lock him down. A lot of teams were really able to focus on, that's the impact player that you need to lock down for Panther City. Then I think that we've seen a lot of those other offensive guys step up, and we've also seen Will Malcolm be able to go get those loose balls when he's not getting those shots off. So I think that he's going to figure out a way to get those loose balls, and he's going to figure out a way to get those points, and he's going to be hitting 100. Trust.
Right
He's
down.
going to hit 100 career points.
I'm filling out my betting slip now. Cody, question for you. Which Rush player, I'm kidding, I'm going to not do that to you. Which player is going to break out this year's NLL playoffs?
Well, Maggie kind of stole it earlier when I was going to bring up Gauthier and just how he rises to the occasion. Like, that would have been my original pick because I think he's just a playoff guy. He's playing 3 hours away from home. You know that there's going to be a lot of family and friends in attendance. I think he's probably bound. If he showed up and had 3-3, would not surprise me at all. Like, that's just how big of a gamer Matthew Gauthier is. If I had to look at someone out east, I'm probably thinking of a guy like Challen Rogers in Toronto, a guy like Tom Schreiber, who could really change the ebbs and flow of that Halifax game, where Halifax isn't going to go down without a fight. Randy Stotts, Cody Jamieson, like Clark Peterson, those guys they're phenomenal players. They're going to hang with Toronto, but it's going to be a close one, and so you're going to need someone to turn the tide. I don't mind a Tom Schreiber in that fact.
I think Randy Stotts, wasn't he the one that just tackled Jeremy Thompson last weekend? I don't think he's afraid to get down with anybody on any team. Which goalie, Maggie? Yeah, we'll go Maggie here. Which goalie would you take in a must-win game, and why?
Well, I'm going to give you the cop-out answer. It's Christian Del Bianco any day. Okay. Any day. He is such an impressive player, just the way that he's able to facilitate that transition play. And, I mean, obviously the saves. Like, he's an incredible player to watch. He's a horrible player to play against. I know that for a fact. But I think a lot of those goalies, like, they're there for a reason. They've gotten this far with their teams. They're all very capable guys. I would take any of them on my team.
Love it. Cody, tell me why it's Rylan Hartley. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Which goalie you like, Cody?
Well, I mean, you set me up for failure by letting Maggie go first and, just taking the layup answer here. If I can't pick CDB because he is the best goaltender in the world, I think Dylan Ward's the second best option here. I think that Ward struggled early in games again this year, but as we saw in playoffs last year, like quarters 2 through 4, the guy can just shut it down. Like, he's a 1 goal against a quarter and sometimes. And when you get that type of goaltending in the playoffs, as long as you can keep it close to level ground after the first quarter, Colorado's got a puncher's chance to win. And it's because of Dylan Ward, and it's because of the clutch saves he makes.
I love this. I don't even know what to think anymore after talking to you guys. You guys showed so many great answers here. I'm just going to throw you guys both a curveball. Who wins it all? Cody, go ahead.
I have to go first? Well,
yeah.
I think pick San Diego. They've been the runaway favorites all year. They should be the champions. They've got the best team on paper. They brought in all the superstars. And so if you're going to try build a championship, you should win a championship. And so if I had to predict one, it would be the Seals.
Maggie?
Cody's got an unfair advantage here. He doesn't have a team in the fight. I got to take Panther City. They're taking it away first season. I mean, it's going to be a show-stopping season for them. I really do think that if they, especially once we get out of single elimination, I think that if they can make it out of the first round, they've got a really good shot of taking it very far.
I like those answers. Okay, thank you guys both for coming on the show. You've made this all worth it, and I cannot wait for the playoffs. I know we're going to have you both on before the finals come, I'm sure. Thank you, Maggie Hale. Thank you, Cody Janzen, for coming on this Daily Dive playoff preview. You guys have been great.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Mike.
Always. Thanks so much, guys. And when I come back, those two are awesome. When I come back, I'm going to wrap up the show with a little bit more words for you guys. This has been Daily Dive, but don't go anywhere. much for everyone to tuning in to our NLL playoff preview. This has been so fun. Check out Daily Dive Lax on social media and click the link tree. And when you do, click the Our Store tab. You get everything with this logo on it, including some new t-shirts, which I think will be a big hit. Trust me, they look awesome. Not because I designed them, because they look sincerely awesome lacrosse shirts. My team that I picked to win it all is the Buffalo Bandits. The player that I want to break out, I'm going to go with a guy that we're having on the show tomorrow, Latrell Harris with Toronto Rock. I know big breaking news is right there in front of you, but let's do Latrell Harris to have a breakout, and that's my pick for the place. And Cody took Tom Schreiber. Come on. You can't do that. Maggie took her hometown, took the home team kid, Will Malcolm. I'm going with Latrell Harris. I'm actually going out on a limb here. I'm kidding. Those two are great. And you guys have been great all season as well. We're not even done this week. We're not even done this season. There's still much more to get to. Remember to fill out your 2022-23 Daily Dive Bracket Challenge if you have not already. A $50 Fanatics gift card is on the line, as well as some Daily Dive swag. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, for great guests on this show like Cody and Maggie, everyone else, for awesome fans like you who want to grow the game, and for everyone behind the scenes here at the show. I am your host, Michael Karvelis, saying have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.